Imagine a commander-in-chief who views his own frontline troops not as heroes, but as disposable batteries designed to power a machine that's already broken. When the Kremlin first gave the order to march into Ukraine in February 2022, the leadership in Moscow was operating under a massive delusion. They truly believed that history would record a swift, glorious conquest, a special military operation where tanks would simply roll over the border, jets would dominate the skies, and the government in Kyiv would vanish overnight. Vladimir Putin expected to walk away with everything he ever desired without paying a cent in consequences. But reality had a different plan. Instead of a quick victory, the Russian state has found itself trapped in a nightmare of its own making, paying for every inch of soil with a literal river of blood. As we moved into December, the sheer scale of this catastrophe became impossible to hide, as new data revealed the staggering number of Russian soldiers who never make it home each month. The Russian military isn't just taking losses, it is hemorrhaging its future, and the Ukrainian defense is the one holding the blade. During a pivotal address to the Parliament of the Netherlands on December 16th, President Volodymyr Zelensky didn't hold back the grim details of what is happening on the ground. He spoke of a conflict where human life has been stripped of its value by the aggressor. According to his report, Putin doesn't place his faith in the people he governs, he worships only the cold metrics of power and the weight of his treasury. The cost of this obsession? It's roughly 30,000 Russian lives being extinguished on the battlefield every single month. To be clear, we aren't talking about the wounded or the missing. We are talking about 30,000 confirmed deaths every 30 days. Does it chill you to think that an entire city's worth of people is being wiped out just to maintain a failing offensive? Zelensky supported these claims with raw data, noting that while some months see the toll dip to 25,000, others have spiked as high as 31,000. These aren't just guesses, they are backed by hours of drone surveillance footage that captures the final moments of these soldiers in high definition. If these monthly figures hold steady, Russia is looking at an annual death toll of roughly 360,000 men. These aren't soldiers who can be patched up in a field hospital and sent back to the trenches. These are permanent losses. Even for a regime as notoriously cold-blooded and indifferent as Putin's, this level of attrition is a ticking time bomb. You have to wonder, how long can any nation, no matter how large, sustain a wound that deep? Back in November, reports from United 24 Media corroborated these claims, highlighting that October alone saw 25,000 Russian deaths. In fact, that month was considered the deadliest since the invasion began, but that record was quickly shattered. If Zelensky's latest figures are right, November was even worse, claiming 31,000 lives. This tells us two critical things. First, the Russian strategy of trying to win by simply throwing bodies at the problem is failing more spectacularly than ever before. Second, the Ukrainian military has found a way to make killing the enemy more efficient and, surprisingly, more rewarding for their troops. This leads us to a fascinating and somewhat dark evolution in modern warfare, the gamification of the battlefield. While Russia relies on 19th century tactics, Ukraine is using 21st century psychology. In early November, reports surfaced about a program called the Brave One Market. Essentially, Ukraine has taken the mechanics you'd find in a video game, leaderboards, points, and unlockable rewards, and applied them to drone operations. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, doesn't it? But for the soldiers on the ground, it's a very real incentive. A drone pilot who confirms a kill on a Russian soldier earns 12 points if they manage to. Take out a multi-million-dollar tank, they get 40 points. These points are then spent in the marketplace to acquire even more advanced technology, better drones, and specialized gear to increase their effectiveness. Over 400 drone units are currently competing in this system. Mikhailo Fedorov, the Minister of Digital Transformation, sees this as a necessary tool for survival. If turning defense into a competitive challenge provides the motivation needed to stop an invasion, the ethical questions take a back seat to the reality of staying alive. But why is the death toll so high in the first place? The answer isn't just found in Ukrainian ingenuity, it's found in the Kremlin's fundamental disregard for its own people. As Zelensky pointed out to the Dutch parliament, Russian assaults are characterized by an almost insane level of violence and a total lack of concern for casualties. In Putin's eyes, a soldier isn't a father or a son. They are a resource, no different from a bullet or a gallon of diesel. They are meant to be used up. Independent observers have started calling this a war of expendable people. They've noticed a pattern. The vast majority of the men being sent into the meat grinder aren't from the gleaming towers of Moscow or the cultural hubs of St. Petersburg. Instead, the recruitment net is cast over the most impoverished, forgotten regions of the country. Ethnic minorities are lured in with the promise of salaries they could never dream of earning at home, only to realize too late that they are considered second-class human resources. This isn't an accident, it's the blueprint. Russian military doctrine has always leaned on the idea of outlasting the enemy through sheer mass. But under Putin, this has turned into a grotesque parody of leadership. Even those within the Russian system have let the mask slip. Take Alexander Borodai, a member of the State Duma and a former puppet leader in the occupied territories. In a leaked recording that went viral across the Russian internet, he described the volunteers as meat. He argued that from the perspective of the men in suits in the Kremlin, these soldiers have no social value. They are often older, unproductive, and ultimately expendable. To the leadership, their only purpose is to exhaust Ukrainian resources. If a Russian soldier dies, it's viewed as a success because it means Ukraine had to use a drone or a shell to stop them. It's not a tragedy in Moscow, it's just a line item on a ledger. War is the only business where the CEO profits from the workers' graves. This culture of brutality doesn't stop at the enemy lines, it permeates the entire Russian military hierarchy. Investigative reports have detailed a terrifying environment where ground-level officers treat their subordinates with total contempt. Soldiers who are disliked by their superiors might be sent on suicide runs, missions where is zero expectation of survival simply because of a personal grudge. There are even accounts of soldiers being executed by their own side, only to be filed away as missing in action, to avoid paying out death benefits to their families. A psychoanalyst named Aline Putilovskaya noted that this violence trickles down from the very top. High-ranking officials are mocked by their superiors, who in turn inflict that cruelty on those below them. It's a cycle of abuse that projects an image of strength to the world while being hollow and rotten on the inside. You might think that even a cold-hearted leader would want to keep his soldiers alive simply to maintain a more effective fighting force. After all, a veteran is more valuable than a raw recruit. But Putin is blinded by his own history. He looks back at Russia's past victories and sees attrition as a proven winner. He is doubling down on the meat grinder approach, amassing hundreds of thousands of troops in single locations like Pokrovsk. To him, the mountains of corpses are just the necessary collateral. Damage required to move a map line a few inches, but look at the math. Between November and December, Russia gained roughly 243 square miles. If you apply the 30,000 deaths per month figure to that gain, it means they are losing about 123 soldiers for every single square mile they capture. Is a patch of scorched earth really worth 120 lives? A leader who doesn't count his dead will eventually lose his crown. The Institute for the Study of War has been clear. This isn't sustainable. Russia is struggling to keep up its multi-pronged attacks because the cost in men and material is simply too high to maintain in the long run. Putin's blind devotion to these bloody tactics might very well be his undoing, but only if the international community continues to turn up the heat. This is why Zelensky is pushing so hard for the seizure of frozen Russian assets. He knows that while Putin doesn't care about his people, he cares deeply about his wallet. There is currently a massive legal and political battle over more than $200 billion in Russian funds held in European accounts. The EU is looking for ways to use this money to support Ukraine, potentially through a loan guaranteed by the assets themselves. Naturally, the Kremlin is panicking, threatening to seize private holdings of European investors in retaliation. They are fighting harder for those frozen dollars than they are for the lives of the 30,000 men dying every month. The cracks are starting to show in Russia's ability to replenish its ranks as well. Since domestic recruitment is faltering, they've started looking elsewhere. There are reports of thousands of foreign fighters from over 120 different countries being lured into the conflict through deception and bribery. Many are told they will be working in safe back-end support roles, only to find themselves pushed to the very front of the assault within days of arriving. Even within Russia, the business model of recruitment is failing. In regions like Samara, the massive signing bonuses that used to entice people are being slashed. When a bonus drops from the equivalent of $45,000 down to just $5,000, it's a clear signal that the coffers are running dry. If the money disappears, the stream of recruits will dry up with it. And without a constant supply of fresh meat, the entire Russian strategy collapses. The battlefield truth is finally catching up to the Kremlin's propaganda. The narrative of an unstoppable Russian juggernaut is crumbling, leaving behind nothing but the reality of a leader who gambled his country's future on a war he cannot afford to win. If you found this deep dive into the true cost of the conflict insightful, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next breakdown. We have a lot more to cover regarding the shifting tides of this war, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.